Imagine this. December 24th, 1872 in Concordia, Kansas. 6th Street between Broadway and Washington on the south side of the street here. This is the exact block that I'm looking at now. Christmas Eve, wind sustained about 25 mile an hour. Temperatures in the low teens. You pull the ashes out of your wood stove, put them in a bucket next to your window on the floor, and by 1 o'clock you have a working fire starting in this first building, working its way down all the way down the block until the last 2 buildings. Everything I've researched about this fire, I'm going to give you the most accurate account of the fire that I could possibly give you. I believe this to be the most true story of the Christmas Eve fire of 1872. Welcome to the very first episode of Embers of the Past, where I dive into historic fires that shaped towns and changed the future of the fire service. Presented by First Due Trade Works, located in Concordia, Kansas, maker of custom knives and leather goods. I also do 3D printing, powder-coated bullets, and artisan soaps. Believe it or not, that's an odd combination, I know, but it's just things that I'm into. In 1860, James Hagaman arrived in Kansas with his wife Mary. 8 head of cattle, $125 in gold, and a set of carpenter tools. That's all they had. And James built the very first house on what would become the Concordia town site, and within just a few years, he was a successful businessman. He bought and sold calves, and in only 4 years, his taxable property grew from a few hundred cattle to $1,800. That may not sound like much today, but back then, that was serious money. After that, James moved into politics. He carried the 1866 petition that created Shirley County, which was later renamed Cloud County. He was elected county clerk, then state representative in 1868. And with his background in business, he became one of the main promoters of the town itself. In December of 1870, he drafted the charter for the Concordia Town Company and served as its president. He even personally drew the plans for the first U.S. Land Office building, constructed in 1870 and finished in 71. By the early 1870s, James Hagaman was Concordia. On October 31st, 1871, a meeting was held in Hagaman's office to organize a fire company for the town. And that decision would soon prove critical. Concordia had no waterworks. Firefighting options were limited. The town had about 120 buildings, almost all of them cheaply built from cottonwood and pine. It was a fire waiting to happen. In 1872, James began practicing law and built a law office on the south side of 6th Street between Broadway and Washington. He was one of just 12 lawyers in town. We don't know the exact details of every building, but from photos and written accounts, we can kind of piece together the block. From west to east, there was the Wagner drugstore with a saloon upstairs. 6 buildings that we don't have records for. Then there was the Glidden House, a 2-story framed hotel considered the most important building on the block, and one of the best hotels in the city. Next came Hagaman's law office, and finally, one last building, believed to be the Collins and Dennis grocery and general store, though that part isn't 100% certain. On the night of Christmas Eve, 1872, ashes from a wood stove in the Wagner building were placed in a container near a window. It was bitterly cold and extremely windy. Eyewitnesses later described it as a gale from the northwest, likely around 25 mile an hour sustained winds, with temperatures in the low teens. Sometime around 1 in the morning, the wind blew hot ashes down inside the wall through a gap in the boards. Those embers turned into a working fire. People were awakened by shouting and chaos. A bucket brigade, made up of ordinary citizens, formed and began fighting the fire. But according to a 1907 newspaper recounting of it, it was one of the coldest nights ever experienced in Kansas. Buckets of water thrown onto the flames would freeze mid-air and fall as solid ice, according to that article. Eventually, a desperate decision was made. To stop the fire, one building had to be sacrificed. That building was James Hagaman's law office. Everything inside was carried out, furniture, books, documents, and saved. Then the building was dismantled and thrown into the street to create a fire break. That decision saved the final building on the block. The next morning, James Hagaman headed to work, unaware of what had happened overnight. He was known for having a short fuse, but to everyone's surprise, he found no fault in what the volunteer firemen had done. He was actually grateful for it. The total loss from the fire was estimated at $30,000, which would be roughly $800,000 today. No deaths were recorded, though several of the volunteer firefighters suffered frostbite. The town rebuilt immediately, but this time smarter. James rebuilt his law office using stone instead of wood. It was completed in 1874 at 116 West 6th Street, and Concordia was changed forever. That Christmas Eve fire became the catalyst for major improvements. Fireproof construction took over, stone and brick replaced wood storefronts. A stricter building mindset emerged. The city began organizing a real fire department with equipment, cisterns, and planning. Public water access became a priority. Fire break tactics became standard practice, and reconstruction attracted new investment, helping secure Concordia's future growth. Out of the ashes, a prairie town reimagined itself. James Hagaman went on to do even more. He became a newspaper proprietor, co-founding the Concordia Blade in 1879. He worked as a land agent and lumber dealer. He served 5 terms on the city council, and despite all of it, when he died quietly at home in January of 1904, the city council took no official notice. He was buried in an unmarked grave around the age of 73. By the time you saw the sign, Hagaman, attorney at law, in 1872, the man behind it had already founded the town, shaped its government, and helped decide its future. I originally intended this video to focus solely on the Christmas Eve fire of 1872, but to tell that story, I had to tell the story of James Hagaman. I hope you enjoyed learning about the founding of Concordia, its most destructive early fire, and the man who helped build the city from the ground up. Thank you for watching.